At Dave Cooper Live, we connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. All right, welcome everybody to Dave Cooper Live. For decades, we have treated design, construction like two separate conversations. Now, and then you wonder why projects run late. They go over budget or fall apart in the field. Today's guest doesn't live in one lane. He designs, he builds, he invents, and he spent his entire career proving that when architects think like builders and builders respect design intent, everything changes. On this episode of Dave Cooper Live, we're talking prefab, modular, ICF, risk reduction, and what it really takes to build smarter in today's construction environment. However, before we get into all of this and more, we got to give a big shout out to all of our supporting members. CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Every build deserves comfort that lasts. Cobalt Creed helps builders and offsite manufacturers reach new levels of indoor air quality and efficiency. With their proprietary small duct, high velocity central heating and cooling system, quiet, compact, powerful, Cobalt Creed, building comfort into every building. Learn more at cobaltcreed.com. All right, again, a big thank you to all of our supporting members and all the supporting members you see going across the bottom there and the ticker. We can't do any or all of this without all of you out there supporting us. And hey, if you'd like to be a guest on the Dave Cooper Live show, there's a QR code right there. Make sure you pick on that QR code with your phone and register to be a guest on the Dave Cooper Live show. We're always looking for people that are founders, CEOs, innovators, taking construction to the next level. And if we don't know about you, we can't have you on the show. So register to sign up. We'd love to talk to you and learn more about what it is that you do. All right. Without further introductions, or let's get into the introduction. If I can get my tongue untied. Paul, how you doing today?
Doing great, Dave. How are you?
Man, I'm all tongue-tied today. It must have been a long weekend of freezing in the ice rinks. You know, I got to give a big shout out to my daughters, man. They won the championship game up in Lake Erie, going for a national women's title in ice hockey. So maybe I'm still cold and shivering.
I'm sure you are. That's great to hear. Congratulations.
Hey, Paul, you've seen this show for a long time, and it's the same thing for you. So I hate to do it to you, but we got to do it. Paul, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we're going to have a family member on the show, but you only have a minute and a half to do it. Tell us who you are, where you come from, and how you got to where you are right now.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Um, Basically from New York originally. Grew up just outside New York City, a wonderful place where New York City was that way and the Hamptons were that way. So a lot of fun there. Started swinging the hammer at 15 with my uncle, who was a contractor, and eventually went to architecture school. And in the summers, I was framing houses out in the Hamptons. So always kind of had a hand in both sides, the design side and the construction side, and inevitably started our business there in 2002. So Architects LOFT, we're in business now 24 years, going strong, and started our first construction company back in New York as well, and moved out here to Arizona about 11 years ago. Kind of loving life out in the sunny state here, and we're licensed in 30 states, so I still work across the country on ground up projects, mostly prefab type projects, apartment projects, hospitality, custom homes across the country. So still get the opportunity to fly around and see some really fun places.
Well, yeah, and this is what's really cool about it, right? I mean, you've been in this business a long time of designing, right, and building things. And I think we're going to hop into you. You have a presentation for us. You're going to walk us through, and you do this presentation at events all across the country, right? I mean, you're at the Build Show, you're at Offsite Construction shows everywhere, talking about this. So I hope everybody's paying attention here, because this is something normally you'd have to pay thousands of dollars to go check out. To see Paul. But, Paul, before we get into this, right, why don't you tell us, how did you even start considering offsite construction, ICF, any of it, as even a solution or a tool in your tool bag?
Sure. That's an easy one, Dave. And it was actually our construction side that got me moving in that direction. Like I said, back in New York, we were building some ground up projects and really just kind of got done with our trade partners calling up Monday morning and saying, "Hey, something came up, an emergency on another job site, and I can't get there this week." And you say, "Well, yeah, that's fine, but you just threw my schedule 4 weeks because I had three different trade partners lined up behind you." So eventually, I just got tired of that and said, "It's got to be a better way." That's where we started to look into prefabrication. And initially, it was volumetric modular. That was our first start into building prefab projects. And eventually, we moved on to insulated concrete form and componentized type products. But really, that was it. It was wanting to get more of a handle on schedule and reliability and consistency with building a project.
Well, that's it, right? It's
Yeah.
that consistency, it's that repetitiveness, that's being able to see your books from the very beginning to the very end and truly knowing, what it is that you designed and built. But even more importantly, not that you're not important, Paul, the stakeholders of the product
Yeah.
has a comfort. And we're going to get into all this. So if you're a designer, architect, builder, developer, or somebody that's just interested in what this is all about, Paul's going to give us some tips and tricks in the end on, what are the biggest mistakes, what are the biggest wins from this, and what projects require modular, panelized ICF, because it's not a one size fits all. Is that correct, Paul?
That is 100% correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get into it? I'm going to put your slide deck here on the screen. Why don't you walk us through what you have here today?
Sure. Well, Dave, this is just it's a presentation that we've done at a number of different offsite, construction conferences across the country and such. Just an overview, talking about the different modalities and options that we have. So on this slide, for example, it's talking about whoops, the different construction classes that we can have with prefab construction, whether it's type 2B, so steel frame, light gauge infill, that type of thing. Types 3 is generally wood frame, but 1 hour rated perimeter walls, and type 5 traditional wood frame construction. All these different components and technologies meet IBC or IRC, depending on the manufacturer, of course. They have to have their own certifications as well. And the nice thing about it, while we're talking about volumetric modular, is that it's built in a factory setting in a controlled environment. So even in inclement weather conditions or inclement or weather challenged sites, it's a really beneficial way to build because we're not standing out there in sub-zero weather, trying to put sheathing on, which is never a good thing. All these different technologies are, when we say offsite, delivered to the site, usually on a flatbed type of delivery system, and then we just crane them into place and connect them. And it does generally speed up the construction phase, which is really where we find great value and benefit in prefab delivery. Um,
Let me ask you, was this a project that a client actually came to you and said, hey, Paul, we want to do modular? Or
yeah, so
or how did it come about?
as I'm flipping through a couple of different projects here, it's a case that sometimes the client will come with the idea of doing something prefab in mind. They've heard about it, they're interested in it, they've never done it before, but they say, this is something that we'd like to look into, and we have experience in it, so they're inevitably referred to us for that purpose. But it's the kind of thing where if they're not, we often recommend it just because it's a beneficial way to build. So this project we're looking at right here, for example, was a panelized project, and this was a function of COVID. This was being built at the time, COVID was in place, and having a factory build all the panels, all the wall systems in a controlled environment was tremendously, time saving, because at that time, if you remember those COVID days, it was a pretty ugly environment to be working in as far as construction sites. So these are oftentimes things that we will either recommend or have the client come to us with, and just take it from there and run with it, basically.
I know we're going to get into this at the end when we talk about what architects, designers should be looking at. But do you always look at a project and see if it can be offsite? And do you get projects that are already designed, or do you like, no, if we're doing this, we got to begin from the beginning. We cannot take somebody's project and turn it modular or panelized.
Sure, that's a really good question. As I mentioned earlier, we always look at it at the onset for the opportunity to utilize prefab. And in this slide, you can see there's four different, modalities that we can talk about: modular, hybrid, panelized, and componentized. And then, of course, there's good old-fashioned site stick built traditional. But like I said, we will often recommend it. It's a fit for any project, really. It just depends on which system you want to use and what the client's end goals are. So yeah, I think it's a very very sort of communal discussion to have right at the onset of a project.
Love it. All right, next slide.
Oh, sure. Did you have a question that I missed, Dave?
Oh, no. Sorry. Go ahead. No, absolutely. I thought you froze up on me. Keep moving.
No, I think I answered it. I'm not sure what else there was.
Yeah. No, so as we look at this, Paul, right? And I think this is the biggest hurdle, right? Is where does design meet construction? This is the biggest question everybody has that's out there with architects, right? They feel like they lose control of the design process. They feel like they lose control of the build process because it's going through a manufacturer versus the architect coming out and inspecting, in which you still inspect. But now you have a manufacturer with hundreds of employees and designers that are there assisting you to make sure it's done right. So, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've gone through when having a client, hey, say, yeah, we're going to do a panelized structure versus a volumetric or vice versa?
I think so. Just to start at the beginning, you have to establish what that system is that you'd like to propose. And if it's volumetric modular, that's fine. If it's panelized or ICF, there's different reasons to sort of guide a project in one direction or the other. But once you establish that, really, I think the important thing is to get a communication cycle going where all of the stakeholders are aware of what is being proposed. So if, for example, we're talking about modular construction, we would want to engage modular suppliers early on in that process. It doesn't have to be one; it could be several that the choice might not be made yet in terms of who the actual fabricator will be. But the earlier you can engage those folks and kind of get buy-in on the direction that you're proposing, the smoother the project's going to go. And that goes for any modality, structural insulated panels, insulated concrete form. All these different modalities have, I don't want to call them constraints, but there's limitations. There's things that we have to acknowledge in the design phase. For volumetric modular, it's the size of the modules, right? It's the width, the length, the height, shipping, logistics, all that ties into it. So I think that early communication and looping in the vendors early on helps to avoid problems later on down the line. And with respect to the construction phase, as you mentioned a moment ago, and inspection process and things like that, oftentimes it's a more rigorous inspection process with a prefab delivery method, simply because there are things that need to be seen in the plant that can't be inspected in the site when it gets delivered and it's completed. So you are sort of more comforted by the fact that there is a more rigorous inspection process happening along the way, rather than just kind of waiting on a site visit to happen for a building inspector or code enforcement officer to show up and just kind of do a 2-hour walkthrough on what could be a very large project where you really can't see too much. So it's a beneficial, I think, process in terms of that inspection phase as well, to look at prefab as an option.
How about code? We talk about inspections, right? Offsite construction, no matter what form you're using, it seems to be a little bit trickier with local code enforcement than what they're normally used to, where they can inspect every little nail that goes into a building or screw, right? How have you been dealing with those challenges, and what do you find is the biggest hurdle and challenge when dealing with a new building department for a new project?
That's a great question and a valid point, Dave, because it does happen. So I think again, just to kind of repeat what I said a moment ago, an early communication with the municipal entity, and best case with inspectors that might be the ones involved in this project, can be beneficial, because you give them the opportunity to be successful. Sort of get onto a call, get into a meeting, say, hey, we're thinking about this project in the way of volumetric modular or insulated concrete form. Have you worked with those technologies yet? Have you seen them out in the field? If the answer is yes, you've already got a leg up. If the answer is no, that's the opportunity just to engage and provide some basic information and, in effect, a little bit of education for that particular individual to have more of a comfort level when they get on site, so that they're not just walking on cold and sort of don't even know what they're looking at in some cases. So I think that's a really positive way to move forward towards the construction phase. And then it also is to lean on the factory or the producer of the prefabricated components to make sure their documents are in place. And so what I mean is any chain of custody issues that the building department may be interested in, or a building inspector, make sure all that paperwork is in place. That applies particularly, for example, with shipping containers. When we are working, we're doing right now a new franchise for a drive-through coffee shop that's going to be built with shipping containers. We have to have that chain of custody documentation in place to make sure that they're safe, first. But second, it's in the code. It's what the building department's looking for. With volumetric modular, it's the sticker that usually goes inside the cabinet door in the kitchen that shows that it's been inspected and certified in the plant, so that a field inspector who's there just to look at foundations, really, not really the superstructure, which has already been inspected and approved, gives them the opportunity to say, oh, I see it, it's here, I can check that box off. So all that stuff, all that documentation is a big part of the process. And again, early education and communication with the municipal entities helps go a long way.
Yeah, no, for sure. And for the stakeholders out there as well, I think a big bonus add is, I mean, it's being inspected multiple times. It's being inspected in the factory. It's being inspected by a third-party engineering and structural company that's, making sure the factories are accountable. And then it's also being inspected by you as an architect when it arrives, as well as the local building official.
Yeah.
To me, it's like a win-win if you really want to get something that you paid for, and you're going to know it's there. There is no shortcut because it's Fridays and you're trying to get out of work early, right? I mean, it's the installation's behind the wall.
Yeah. It's a rigorous process. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right, you want to continue?
Well, I mean, that's about as much as I could add with respect to municipalities. I mean, inevitably, there are just some inspectors that are not interested. They don't
Right,
want to talk to you. They're going to get out to the field and they're going to look for what they need to look for. In those cases, it really just comes down to navigating that site walk and making sure that you've got the answers that you may not know they're going to have questions
right.
to, but you try to preempt what some of those questions might be and have the answers readily available for them. That's the
Sure,
best.
sure. And when you're ready to go back to the other slides in the presentation, let me know. What would you say is do you have a favorite that you like to use? Modular, panelized, volumetric? Is there one over the other that you prefer?
They're all really great systems to build with. Comparing all of them to traditional site built, stick built. Nothing wrong with site built, stick built. Like I said, just over the years, we've found much benefit to getting into more prefabrication. And I think if I had to pick and choose one, it would be really based upon the project type, right? Because again, different fit for different type of use. But at the end of the day, volumetric modular for me is the easiest and simplest one because it's the least amount of site work that happens. Um, Structural insulated panels, insulated concrete form, componentized systems still has a heavy site component in terms of their
Right,
erection and connections and things like that. Volumetric modular, most of it's happening in the factory. I'd say 65% of your build is happening in the factory. And so once it gets out to the site and we're craning it into place, it's a beautiful thing to see. We've designed and built volumetric modular. In fact, back in the day in New York, we were an authorized builder with a number of different modular factories. And as compared to a site built, stick built product, there's nothing like the feeling of seeing your foundation. And by the end of the day, like the whole first floor is built. And it's like
right.
built. Bathrooms are in like finished. Tile niches built in. The kitchen cabinets are installed. All the light fixtures are in. Mirrors are on the walls. It's an amazing thing to be able to see that happen so quickly when traditionally you might just have, your shoes and plates cut by the end of that one day if you were site stick building. So just a great, great way to build. And if I had to choose, that would be the one all day long.
Yeah, I mean, it takes so much off your plate once the details are done, right? You're kind of handing it over to an entire factory that has an entire
Exactly.
team and system in place just for securing and procuring the material and also
Correct.
the logistics of the bite and everything else. I think that's what's really cool. And I'm on your commercial site here on your website on the commercial page, and it doesn't look like you're limited to what you can build, right?
No, I mean, not all of these projects are prefab. Some are traditional
Right.
site built, stick built. But the fact is, yeah, you really are not limited. And again, it kind of goes to which system you're going to use. So volumetric modular is not a fit for every project. Insulated concrete form, not a fit for every project. But as long as you know how to distinguish which and what, you really can do some amazing things. I mean, the volumetric modular, I think the interesting thing about it, because I find that many architects are not interested in volumetric modular because they feel like it's going to limit their creativity. Then that's fine. I mean, if you really want to design, award-winning projects, and that's all you're interested in, maybe it's not a fit. But the thing is, I think that the challenges that volumetric modular create in terms of design are more interesting because you're stretching more. You really have
Right.
to dig deep to find ways to make those limitations work for you. So the benefits, of course, we talked about already. When you get downstream to the construction phase, it's a breeze. not a breeze. I shouldn't say that it's construction, so there's always going to be some challenges, but it's
Right.
a lot less than when you're, doing a site built, stick built project. Just because we figure all that stuff out so much sooner in the process, even at the design phase. Working in conjunction with the factories, we want to make sure that we've got stacking, waste and soil and things like this. All that stuff out in the field sometimes, between poor drawing coordination and ineffective trades sometimes can really become messy, and you need a lot of rework to get it to be fixed. But with prefab delivery, you kind of cross those bridges early on in the process, and the construction phase just goes a lot smoother.
What's the biggest hurdle, Paul, when it comes to offsite construction, being an architect? From an architect's perspective,
Yeah.
if you were to sit down and have a session with 10 other architects, and they're all going to tell you a story about what they dislike about designing to offsite construction, what's the common theme?
Well, common theme I could get
Or
to, but I would,
themes if we need to make it plural.
yeah, exactly. I would say the common theme is just a lack of education and awareness on what these systems are and how they work, and more importantly, what the benefits are of them. At the end of the day, we're building better buildings because
Right.
it's a much more well insulated envelope. It's a high performance type of building, which is good for everybody. That being said, the challenge is, like I said, this misconception, as I mentioned earlier, this misconception that it's you're locked into designing boxes and you have no creativity. You really have to look at that as more of a challenge than an impediment, because it's the kind of thing where any good designer can make anything work well if
Right.
they put their mind to it. So I think that initial sort of off-putting notion that there's going to be these limitations that are going to restrict or constrict design flexibility, that's probably the biggest hurdle for designers as far as I see it. But like I said, we overcame it years ago, in effect, just by chance, because our construction side was just
Right.
having so much challenges with the site built stuff. And then once we embraced it, it was just like, wow, this is great. Yeah, it's a little more difficult up front to be able to make things work programmatically. But once you kind of get that momentum rolling, every next project that comes along, it gets easier and easier. So I think that's
Yeah.
important to open up to the idea that limitations, convert that to challenges and stretch yourself to
So
do better.
being that you guys, design and build in, I think you said 33 states. Was that correct?
We're across the country we're working, yeah.
Yeah, across the country. So with that said, does offsite make it easier for you to manage that when it's so widespread where you're building and what you're building?
It actually does. And on the build side, we're focused in Arizona. And
Yeah.
so we're not building cross country, but we're licensed in the architecture side and we're working in. The interesting thing is that you have, in the case, for example, of volumetric modular, there's factories pretty much across the country. And when you talk about how far can we ship volumetric modular before it starts to become cost prohibitive, most manufacturers will say a 500 to 800-mile radius is kind of the maximum that you want to be shipping. Some will defer towards like 500 as the cap, and some are saying, well, we're comfortable to say 800. So that ability to find factories that can service the area that you're building in actually makes it easier to manage,
Yeah.
even if you are not in that state. Because again, majority of the work is happening in the plant, and you don't have to, worry about rallying local trades. I will say the other thing, just to go back to what you were saying earlier about some of the challenges that people have with prefab, is saying, well, you're taking money out of local labor force, and that's not good for a local community. And there is a certain amount of truth to that because, yeah, a lot of the work is being done in a plant. But the thing is, you still have to do site work. There still is local trades that are required. I mean, certainly all of the site work itself, excavation, foundations, always happens on site with local talent. Um, but when you get into things like electrical, mechanical, plumbing, cladding, all that local talent is still needed. because you're not doing 100% of the build in the plant. You're only doing the superstructure portion. So when you get out to the site, you still need somebody to plug and play all the utilities into the building. And I think that's important to think about because we don't want to isolate communities and, sort of give work to somebody that's 500 miles away. We do want to support local communities.
Yeah,
And that's
I
the
see
way
it.
that happens. Yeah.
So I see it the opposite. I don't think it hurts them at all. I think it helps them because
Yeah.
everybody's struggling with labor. They can't get people to work in the trades. It allows them to do more with less people,
From
right?
that
So for the
standpoint,
folk,
yeah,
right?
you're right. There is a diminishing labor force when it comes to construction. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big factor these days too.
So they get the support of the factory and they still get to put their name on it and tie it all together and do all the infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big thing. I don't think we're taking away. I think we're just we're enabling them to be able to do more work with less people and have a lot less liability because now the liability is shared on an entire building if something were to not be soldered right or put together right, whatever, right?
That's right. Yeah. Risk mitigation is a big factor here, especially in inclement weather, or weather challenged areas.
Yeah.
And I have set volumetric boxes while it's snowing. I have done that. It's not preferred, but you got schedule and you got tractor trailers rolling down the block with product.
Right.
You got to do what you got to do. But that being
Sure.
said, it was a lot safer than having guys walking around a 2 or 3 story structure in the snow.
Right.
When it's just the set crew who's using safety harnesses and things like that. So
Yeah.
a couple of handful of guys are putting together, or guys and gals, I should say, are putting together a whole first floor plate of a building, the whole story completed, rather than just walking around sort of framing or putting in rough electric or plumbing or mechanical in inclement weather conditions. They're working inside a finished product. So there's a lot of benefit to that on site as well. And then to
Mhm.
your point, Dave, with respect to it being advantageous, yeah, that component is correct. And oftentimes, general contractors that are not savvy to prefab or have not done it or are not interested in it, oftentimes I find the complaint as well. It's taking money out of our pocket. Why should we give 65% of the bill to a plant 500 miles away when we could use our own labor force here? Why would we
Right.
want to do that? And the response I have is, look, you're making the same amount of money. It's just proportionate, right? So you're making less gross profit, but you're spending less time on the job, which means you move on to the next one.
Right.
And you get in and out more quickly and with less risk. And it's kind of good for everybody. If we can get projects, get heads on beds
That's what they
sooner,
say. Yeah.
that's good for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Including the local economy.
Sure. Well, you have about half dozen or so more slides in that deck. Do you want to go through that, or what would you like to do?
Yeah.
Let me pull it back up for you here.
All right, well,
Walk us through the rest of it.
Yeah, just to walk through a couple things here. You could see in this case a module being delivered, and there's crane taking off where we're going to drop it right onto our foundations. There's a finished product you could see, for example, and here it's just some samples of work product. This is a 5/1 apartment project, typical podium construction, where we're going to have a mixed use design with some retail and parking at the ground level in addition to our support spaces. And then 2 towers with a nice courtyard feel in between. This is, again, just apartments. Pretty straightforward. Can be a conventional site-built, stick-built project, or using volumetric modular, we'll be able to get this project finished in probably 30% less time on the construction schedule. And, we're working around a challenging site on this one. Half the site dropped off at like a 70% gradient. So dropped 50 feet. So we were working around that.
Wow.
And volumetric modular was a great fit because we didn't have to deal with so much site. These are different projects that we sourced from the Modular Building Institute. And these just show the range of amazing design ability that we have with volumetric modular, for example. Again, this just illustrates this ability. A Modular Building Institute project here again. Actually, Gurdon, I believe, built this. So we see a concrete frame, and then the modules being dropped on top. That's what we call hybrid construction for the whole superstructure. So we can mix and match systems. And then, of course, you see there's this nice curtain wall added at the bottom there as a part of a mixed use site. This is a project we designed over in California, which has that same idea in that it's 7 stories at the street side and then the site dumped off really steep. So we've got 5 levels of parking below, so 12 stories down on the low side of the site. But in a hybrid modality, we're able to use lift slab construction, right, or flat plate type concrete construction, which we then would typically come back and infill all of our rough frame, rough electric, plumbing, mechanical, all these systems. But in the case of modular, we could just drop our boxes, pour the next slab, drop our boxes, and up we go. And there you see this ability to have some freedom and flexibility. We're undulating the slab so that it creates some interest and it doesn't look as boxy. So different things that we could do. I'd shown this one before. It's a panelized project that went up very quickly and very orderly. It's a componentized project where we talk about different pieces and parts coming to the site. This, in fact, is a geodesic dome that was a guest house for this house, which we built up in Sedona. Fun thing, this will actually be featured on the cover of Sedona Monthly Magazine in March. So we're very happy with that. Yep, really happy to hear that was happening. So, but here you can see again, this is a systems built approach where we've got a post and beam structure, and that's once that goes up, that's it. Everything else just flies right through. And this slide is just illustrating some of the benefits from a construction phase and the construction sequence of using offsite construction. And the bottom line to this is, for the most part, with traditional site-built construction, it's a linear sequence, right? We have to do foundations, and then we have to do framing. Then we could start rough electric, mechanical, plumbing. So everything has to follow everything else for the most part. Certain things can overlap once we get further down the line, but that's kind of the way it goes. With prefab, let's say volumetric modular, as we're building foundations and doing our site work, we're building boxes in a factory. So there's an overlap. And that's where you get the time savings, in addition to the fact that the superstructure just gets installed so much more quickly. But that overlap, that non-linear sequence really helps. So we could cut a construction phase down anywhere from 20 to 40% when using prefab. That's a big number. That's a huge number, in fact.
Yeah, well, I mean, the structure is getting built at the same time you started the site work. So it's happening simultaneously, basically, right? So get your inspections and let your concrete cure on the site and take your delivery. And next thing you know, you're 70% done.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Like I said, it's a beautiful thing to be standing out in the street and seeing that stuff going up. I mean, when we talk about traditional site-built, stick-built, the best framers that I've come across, like the big shops, they could comfortably frame out 1,000 square feet a day, and that's like a couple of 10, 20 guys on site cranking it out. And that's just framing. When we talk about volumetric modular, man, you could put up 2,000 square feet in one day, and that's all done. I mean, the whole thing is built out on the inside. Maybe you got to come back. We got to plug and play and do some cladding on site and whatnot, but the difference is just staggering. Of course, there's an upfront phase in the plant where all that work's being done, but like we said back in this previous slide, that really just makes for a tremendous difference on site.
Yeah, I love it. Just because I thought of it while I was talking, while you were talking, you ever build a modular project and the next day the stakeholders are all coming to see it because they're super excited that yesterday there was only a grade beam and today there's 6 stories above it. Are there expectations of it being done the next day higher than when it's stick by stick, pipe by pipe, wire by wire, right? I mean, you get that. There's kind of like, all right, we should be done in about a week because so much of it looks done.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say 6 stories in one day, Dave, but I would say that.
Oh, don't underestimate me.
Yeah, well, that depends on the size, I guess, of the footprint. But anyway, there's definitely I think an excitement for stakeholders, for owners in particular, once that is ready to launch, because especially if they've never done it before, it's like, wow, is this really going to happen? Are we going to actually see, and be able to walk through a finished
Right.
product after one day of modules being installed? So,
Mhm.
we'll tell them, come on down. Don't wait till the next day. Be there while we're on site with the crane, while it's being lifted and dropped. And, it's just like a lot of energy happening with that sort of sequence moving so quickly. We could set easily 4 to 8 boxes a day with modular construction. And,
Right.
that box could be, 15 feet by 60 feet or 12 feet by 70 feet. That's a lot of square footage to drop with everything finished on the inside. So, yeah, that first set, particularly the first day, is really exciting.
Love it. Love it. You got more after this slide?
Well, it's a fact that there is a shortage of housing, and
Yep.
I feel like there is some opportunity for all of us here in the industry to make a dent in that. This slide just talks about a few different programs that are out there. For example, Canada, the Mortgage Housing Corporation, they've got these different programs. They're looking for prefabricated projects to deliver housing faster. Even stateside, different states, Colorado, Oregon, they're all using grant programs and different federal funds have been appropriated. Hopefully, they'll stick around for these kinds of things to be affected. And it's just the kind of thing where we can make a difference. This is a project that we designed in California. It's a 100% affordable housing project, 6 stories, 5 over 1. It's got all the support spaces down at ground level. And this is a type 2B construction. So it's a steel frame with light gauge infill, but that's a pretty sturdy building.
Yeah.
It's a pretty safe building, fire resistance, termite resistance, things like that. It's just going to go up so fast. It's the kind of thing where we can get heads on beds. And if it's the same cost for an owner, in fact, typically there's a savings for an owner because of that cost savings in the construction schedule. You know, um, that's a good thing for everybody. So
You
I think
prefer
that
steel or wood?
I would always defer to steel if we could. I just like the product better. It's got a sustainable component to it. Sturdier, generally more straight. Light gauge studs are pretty damn straight. Wood studs, you can get that torque and tweak and got to deal with it on site, but it's all good. As long as it's a good quality material, everything goes together nicely.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Yeah, we kind of touched on most of this already,
Pretty
huh?
much, yeah.
Advantages, schedule reliability, union collaboration. Now that this is one that I think super important. We don't talk enough about, right? Because
Yeah.
the unions can get real finicky on this.
Yes. That is a conversation that needs to happen fairly early in the process.
Yeah.
Probably even before we commit too deeply to a full-blown set of documents. And oftentimes we will lean on the modular supplier because they've sort of made some inroads there oftentimes and or have relationships to be able to broach the subject for a project that's not fully baked yet. But you do want to get that union established up front with the union because that can be a little bit challenging.
They will put a rat outside your project. It happened to me.
Happened to me too. I had the rat. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were literally just, a couple 100 feet below the requirements to have to put it out for union labor, right? Which I
Yeah.
couldn't have built it if I had to pay the union wages, right? It was a private little project. And yeah, I showed up, boy, there it was. Big old brown rat and a couple guys standing around.
Yeah. One thing I learned on a project where we had that challenge, which was just a fluke, was a long, narrow site, and the building was down here, and I had to have 2 construction entrances just because of the logistics of getting trucks in the site.
Mhm.
It was actually in New York City. And the fact that I had 2 entrances was incredibly helpful because I think it's law they're only allowed to picket 1 entrance to a site. So
Oh, is that what it is? So you could sneak in the back door.
we're still able to get stuff in and out while these poor guys run around with their coffee cup and their signs. And, it is what it is. Nothing against unions, but you got to find a way to make a project work. You have to make it work.
Right, right. So, listen, let me ask you this. From your experience, what would you say are the biggest wins or the biggest mistakes when adopting offsite construction? We kind of just summarize this conversation. So if somebody tuning in
Sure.
at the end just because they want to hear what the conclusion is, what are the biggest wins and what do you think are the biggest mistakes when people are adopting offsite construction?
Sure. Well, let's start with the bad news first. Um, I think some of the biggest challenges occur right at the front end, and that means the design team. If the design team is, um, first of all, not open to prefab, and you could be an owner or a developer or a contractor, somebody that wants to do a project, and you have this idea in mind. I'd like to investigate prefab. If the designer has not embraced it or is not interested, that's a big red flag because there's just going to be challenges all the way with respect to that individual getting on board or that firm. So it's important to make sure that they've embraced this idea of prefab delivery. Better next step to that is to make sure that they've got experience in it and have done it before. In our case, we've designed it. We've also built it, so we're kind of in a little bit of a separate, whole nother category. But any firm that has designed modular or insulated concrete form or SIPs has already kind of made those mistakes and taken their lumps and bumps and can move that project forward in a fairly orderly and um, uh, positive direction because they know the hurdles that they have to avoid. So I think that's the first thing. The next one, of course, is the constructor who's ever going to be building this project. It's the same concept. They need to have embraced prefab delivery. If they haven't, that might not be the right constructor to be talking to because it's just going to be hurdle after hurdle throughout the process if they don't understand it and have not embraced it. Um, Again, better if they have experience in it because you're just going to, uh, foresee some of those challenges. And for us, we're a collaborative firm. We like to talk with the contractors. We like to, if we can get them on board early, that's always a beneficial thing because when you get those two teams talking, it's good for the owner because we kind of can work through some questions or early on in the process, vet different challenges. So I think that's all the downside. The upside is everything we said earlier. You just get projects done more quickly, move on to the next one. Uh, Generally, the construction is more tight, because we're building in a controlled environment, not raining and snowing on somebody that's trying to make sure they're getting their field nailing of the plywood sheathing at 6 inches on center and the perimeter at 3 inches on center. I mean, that's hard to do sometimes in inclement weather conditions. So it's a really good product that's built at the end of the day. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
so if I'm an architect and I'm watching this or a designer watching this, what is the just and this is the last tip, and then we're gonna go to a couple comments that I saw out there. What
Yeah.
what what is if you were to say, hey, if there's one thing I shouldn't do when it comes to designing offsite mod, let's just use volumetric because that's been a
Yeah.
big portion of this conversation.
Yeah.
What would be your one tip if they said, hey, I have a project, I think we can do this offsite? What would be your one tip to them to put them on the right path?
Sure. I would say research. Do your research and learn as much as you can about that before you get started on the project. Because if you can preempt some of the issues that you would otherwise discover along the way, you don't want to get too far down the design process, without figuring out, oh, this is just a dead end. This is not going to work at all. And this is beyond standard code compliance. This is now actually about the constructability of a project and using a particular system. So I would say education, research, and engage a firm that has done it. You could bring on a firm that has completed that stuff as a consultant. We've actually taken over projects in years past from firms that were just kind of floundering, just couldn't get it to work, couldn't make it happen, and we were brought in as specialists and kind of took over the project, or in some cases, were brought on as a consultant to support that main design team and help them navigate those early hurdles. So education and going to uh, World of Modular, for example, seeing your show as much as possible. These kinds of things all help to, make that process easier.
Yeah, I love it. What's next for you guys, Paul? Like with your firm? I mean, are you going to start designing and building, stuff for SpaceX now? I mean, they are the greatest offsite builders in the world. No offense.
That's right. Well, we're right now we're sticking to non-SpaceX projects, but we've got some exciting things on the boards. We've got some multifamily happening, volumetric modular. We've got some assisted living with a memory care component happening, a new franchise, a new coffee drive-through franchise using upcycled shipping containers is a
Oh,
project that we're working on. And I've also got some other speaking engagements coming up. And of course, I'm going to attend World of Modular, ICSC, International Conference of Shopping Center shows, things like this. So yeah, we've got some fun stuff cooking.
I love it. I have this video that you sent. Obviously it's a rendering, but I wanted to show it. It's so well done.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a cool project, an existing one-story office building on site that was going to remain,
Yeah.
and we had to work around it. So we designed it in an L shape here, and then utilized the roof of the existing one-story structure for an outdoor garden.
Right. Right. Love it. Love it. All right, Paul, what do you say? Let's just put a few comments up that I've seen here. Uh Douglas Hayden, Doug from Calgary, Toronto. I think it's colder down here than it is in Toronto right now, Doug. -4 or -5 degrees this morning. Horrible. Anyhow, he says less risk and faster turnaround. Banks and insurance companies love that. Yeah, he's absolutely right, huh? Absolutely right.
Hey, Dave, I just want to add a comment that's a good point. Banks, lenders are an important factor here in the prefab process because
Yeah.
same as the designers and the constructors, the banks need to be savvy to prefab delivery. It's a different payment structure altogether, especially with volumetric modular. I mean, banks are used to a site built, stick built project. Foundations go in, they come out and inspect. Okay, let's provide that draw. Framing gets delivered. Let's inspect. Materials are on site, provide that draw, and so on and so forth throughout the process. Volumetric modular is different. We have to put money down to get the factory started. Then we have to have progress payments along the way. Meanwhile, nothing is on site. Everything is in the plant. A lot of banks don't like that. They want to know that their stake is there at the site, not somewhere hundreds of miles away. So there are lenders, of course, out there that do work in prefab delivery, but it's important to source
Yeah.
that upfront in the process.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you find the lenders or the investors that will fund the projects, uh, everything's reduced. The time of their money being out there is reduced. They start getting a return because they're getting heads on beds faster,
Yeah.
and there's less risk because the insurance company can drop your rates because there is less action coming and going from the site, less disturbance, less people, all the above. You have to look at the full life cycle of an offsite project versus a site project, and then it all starts making sense. Love it.
Right.
All right, let's here we go. Henry Mickelberg, your name's not showing up again, Henry. Given your national spread, how do you manage third-party state-specific inspectors when you are assembling elsewhere? QR codes and a stakeholder app? Question mark.
Well, QR codes and a stakeholder app sounds good. Um, Certainly, there are a number of different platforms available to us in the construction industry. Procore is kind of the big kid on the block as far as managing projects, especially multiple projects and in multiple, geographical locations. But the inspection process is always local. It always happens with either a local third-party inspector or one that has a national reach that can go to various locations. Sometimes they'll just have an employee stake out there and stay for a month or so in a hotel just to be able to go back and forth to the plant on a regular basis during critical installation, processes that need more eyes on. But again, the standard construction industry management softwares are probably the best way to handle that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the factories are already licensed in the states they're building typically, so they already have these arrangements in place because they can't ship their product anywhere without these third-party inspectors giving approval first.
That's
So
right.
love it, love it. All right, we have another question here. John Magnan, what are the barriers to pre-designed, off-the-shelf multifamily projects? Is that a reasonable goal?
Well, it's a good question, John. Thank you. I guess the challenge there is pretty much every project is site specific, and each site has its own logistical challenges, let alone ingress and egress. Are we an infill lot where there's just one road? Is it a corner lot? Is it three sides that are road? And that's the logistical component. But then there's a design component, right? Where's the sun rising and setting? Where are the views? Where's access to municipal, transportation, which would inform where the entrance is going to go. So I think that's a challenge for preset designs that, it sometimes can be a circle in a square. Might work for some sites, but for the most part, we generally have to have some amount of customization to make some of these things work.
Boy, but wouldn't it be nice just to have perfectly square, 200 by 200 lots? We could just step and repeat all the time. We could definitely get to the affordable housing number quicker. That's for sure.
Dave, in some cases we do. I mean, out
Yeah.
in California now, we're looking at these small little infill lots, like it's 150 by 150. Okay,
Right.
what can we put on that? And to John's question, yeah, that can be a sort of rinse and repeat type process. Now, as a designer, it's never great to think about the same thing going pop, 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 pop. But a good designer can, make something out of that. That's going to be in a variation of cladding, shifting the buildings, on each side, just so it's not a bunch of beige boxes.
Yeah, for sure. Greg Ugaldi, what's up, Mr. Greg? Great job today, Dave and Paul. A ton of information. For those that don't know Greg, he is the past chair of the National Association of Home Builders. And I say it all the time. I've been saying it for years because I think it's cool. I mean, regardless of your politics, he gets to go and update the president and Secretary of Housing on housing initiatives. So that's just cool to have that big of a say. All right, here is the last comment, and then we're going to wrap this up from Jennifer. Was it Orson Welles who said the enemy of art is the absence of limitations? Perhaps he was thinking about offsite construction. Love it. Love it.
Nice.
Paul, man, you got any last words for us? Any last tips, advice? I mean, you put a lot out there.
Just appreciate the opportunity to be here. Dave Cooper Live. Thanks so much.
Well,
Dave.
we appreciate you being here as well. All right, Paul, thanks for joining us. Don't go anywhere. I'll come back to you at the end of the show here. For the rest of you out there, hey, listen, if you want to be a guest on the Dave Cooper Live show, there's a QR code right up in the corner. Pick out your phone, take a photo, sign up. It'll take you to our website. You can put in your information. We're always looking for informative guests to be on the show and to join us right here on Dave Cooper Live. We are growing, and we are growing very, very fast. We got some major events happening this year, and we are working all around the world. So we'd love to have you part of our group. And if you'd like to support us, there's several ways to do that as well. We always appreciate it. Nobody tells us who to have on the show or what to do on the show. That's our only rule. It is live. It is unfiltered. And that's so we can bring you the truth and what's happening in construction out there. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. My name is Dave Cooper, Dave Cooper Live. Make sure you go subscribe and follow everything else that we do. Thanks for watching. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.